Chapter 18, The Yoga of Liberation Through Renunciation. Quote, "It is the duty of science to describe life. It is the purpose of philosophy to explain life. Science describes the natural structures and processes. Philosophy attempts their explanations." End quote, by Swami Chinmayananda. In 18 chapters, the Gita explains a philosophy of living for all and demonstrates a science of how to do so to achieve ultimate satisfaction and peace in the earthly realm. This chapter helps to summarize all previous teachings in this fantastic book of ancient truths. Let us review this chapter now and remember specifically how this particular book that we are currently using that can guide healthcare providers and sincere teachers can bring us back to the integrous practice that each of us can benefit from ourselves and truly heal the spirit of those we care for and the world around us. About this chapter. This chapter summarizes all of the earlier chapters now based on Arjuna's new questions and Krishna's wisdom. Remember that Arjuna is straightforward and simple with a pure heart and is interested in acquiring wisdom. Arjuna wants to know about the nature or essence of sannyasa, which is renunciation, and about what is meant by the essence of tyaga, which is abandonment. He wants to know the difference clearly and precisely. Although these words seem similar, there must be some difference. Krishna tells Arjuna he will share others' views first and then share his own opinion or perspective. Krishna shares that he has heard that sannyasa is the renunciation of all selfish, desire-prompted action, and that learned people say that the renunciation of all the fruits of action is tyaga. He mentions that some great thinkers say that every karma should be given up because every good karma is associated with something not positive because of the nature of duality. The best idea, some say, is to not start anything. As one gives up evil, one can give up all karma. If something has been started, it should be taken to a logical conclusion, not left halfway. Others say that one cannot live in this world without taking some action while living normally. And they say actions can entangle people within more and more action. Krishna then begins to share his thoughts on tyaga. He shares that there are 3 types. He says some things must be done for all spiritual seekers, as these things purify people. This includes austerities, worship, penance, which is a single-pointed concentration or focus on the task, and charities. The idea is to conserve one's mind and senses to focus on any intended success. Then dedicate all the energies conserved towards the goal. This is to be done with gratitude for all factors or people that help one reach his or her goals, and share generously with one's full heart. Krishna says such actions should not be given up. Importantly, he is also clear that the intention and manner with which one shares is important. Again, he reminds Arjuna that the needs to give up the fruits of the results and also the attachments to the results and see the action as an obligatory duty, even to achieve fruits in the heavenly realms in the afterlife, are seen as attachments. This is his view about right karma. A truly sattvic person who is filled with this guna is intelligent, brilliant, and is free from doubts about which karma is to be done. He or she is willing to work through both agreeable or disagreeable experiences and does not like or dislike doing pleasant or unpleasant duties. This person has given up likes and dislikes and has given up attachment to outcomes. The meaning and true essence of the teachings are remembered. This guides clear and right action. Krishna reminds that people cannot live without action. There is no choice as to whether to perform action or not. Karma is the nature of life, so no action is not possible for any embodied being. Remember that the mind and internal organs are constantly at work, even if a person chooses not to move the body or is not able to move. So whether externally or internally or both, man is constantly in action. Now Krishna looks at attachment. Attachment is the insistence of the fulfillment of a desire, specifically in the way a person wants it, like wanting a child but specific about the sex, wanting to work but only one specific job, and when what is wanted is received, wanting to hold on to it, to not lose what is gained. So tyaga is of this nature, one that gives up the fruits of action that should be done. From karma, sometimes great results happen, wanted results, sometimes poor results, unwanted results, and sometimes mixed results. When a person departs from this world, or even finishing one event, the same thinking and experience can happen. The Tyaga personality was never attached to any result, so there is no concern about this. The karma was done for the purity of mind. Tyaga is the preparatory state for sannyasa. Remember that the ego-based I is the one who has likes and dislikes, and the sannyasa renounces such ego attachments as he or she feels they are merely the vessel for the actions guided by higher consciousness. When a person identifies with any object or idea, this is an ego attachment to the senses or the mind. Krishna now explains karma and the 5 factors that need to be part of each action. We remember that the purpose of all actions is for achieving happiness and fulfillment in life. The 5 factors necessary to perform all karma are the body, the doer, the instruments of the sense organs, physiological functions through prana or vital force, and some unseen factor like luck or God or spiritual energy or consciousness or the presiding deities of each sense organ or grace. Krishna says whichever karma a person takes on through the body, speech, or mind, these 5 factors are required. They may also be thought of as the action, the actor, the senses, the endeavor, and the divine or higher consciousness. This being the case, the one that considers the one without the second, which is non-dual, recognizes that Atman, or consciousness, is a non-doer, which gives life and action through all of a person's equipment, who knows that he or she is not the doer as he or she is merged with higher consciousness. When a person owns the action taken through ego identification, he or she is both mistaken and creating more challenges to one's life than are necessary. This is what is seen in the common man's non-purified mind. A purified mind, sannyasa, renounces doership, enjoyership, and the ego. Tyaga renounces likes or dislikes and any attachment to outcome. Karma yoga is only tyaga. This purifies the mind and prepares it for the sannyasa state. Krishna then says that the person who has no ego identification of doership and a mind that is uncontaminated by the result, even if that person destroys the world or people, he or she is not bound. And this is not to encourage killing. This is to kill the ego identification, even with right action. This is called sannyasa. Knowledge, karma, and action are also of the 3 gunas. The knower becomes the doer through the instruments of action. Interesting that in this chapter we learn about how the different gunas think about their actions. Each person is encouraged to understand their own intentions in their work. When someone does sacrifice, charity, or penance from a sattvic space, the intention is to do such actions from a sense of duty and responsibility, and to further purify the vessel from which such work is done. When detaching from this space, with no attachment to the results, such renunciation is done in goodness. The tamasic space practices renunciation from laziness to do the work, or from a clouded perception that does not even see the work to be done. And the rajasic temperament will do the work out of passion to gain honor, prestige, or gain of some sort. The rajasic may also give up something, detach, because it is painful or uncomfortable, and so will fear the body-mind results that may arise. We learn that real abandonment should lead to wider fields of self-expression and push us towards fuller ways of living that introduce us to more expansive experiences of joy. Remember, Krishna has been clear that obligatory actions are done merely because they ought to be done. This is experienced from the sattvic perspective. We are reminded by Krishna that there are three kinds of knowledge stemming from the gunas too. Knowledge which is attached to one's work as if it is the most important, professionally or personally, through one's own calling, is from a narrow-minded and self-centered tamasic perspective. Knowledge that perceives or notices the differences and plurality of all beings of different natures is from the rajasic perspective. Knowledge that perceives in all beings the one consistent essence is from the sattvic perspective. The types of work taken on by these perspectives is also mentioned. That which is done egotistically to satisfy one's own desires and with great efforts is rajasic. That which is done from delusion without regard for consequences, including loss and injury, is tamasic. The work taken on as a course of duty, without a like or dislike, or desire to enjoy the result, so is unwavering in success or failure, is in the goodness experience from sattvic experience. One may think on reading this that the sattvic experience sounds not very exciting and maybe boring. Yet there is within such actions a firm resolution and fortitude, which is dhriti, and boundless zeal, which is utsaha. This personality understands that all actions, including his or her body, mind, and intellect, come into play only because the higher consciousness that is flowing through them. The equipments used are filled with beauty from the heart, filled with love and compassion, and a vitality in the body is from the expression of the eternal and infinite light that shines through such a person. The tamasic experience is unsteady, vulgar, unbending, cheating, malicious, lazy, uncontrolled, dishonest, and procrastinating. The tamasic individual has no control over his or her lower animal instincts, is arrogant and obstinate, is not dependable, and conceals motives and purposes. He or she will create quarrels and disputes, spends time in overindulgence, and through deceit will find chances for enjoying pleasure goods. This nature of person will spend time complaining of people or the world around them and wishes to continue to satisfy a selfish thirst for endless pleasures. The rajasic experience is greedy, harmful, full of delight, and also full of grief. He or she is blind to the amount of sorrow they might bring to another. This person may normally be quite moral and righteous in conduct, but will maliciously push to gain their own goals filled with ulterior motives. Such a person is greedy, aggressive, and impure. Next, we learn about the understanding and will that comes from the gunas. The rajasic mind is confused, so cannot distinguish right from wrong, or what to do or what to avoid doing. The tamasic mind, which is clouded by confusion, that leads to delusion, misunderstands the right from the wrong, and is functioning through darkness. The sattvic understanding knows what ought to be done and what should not be done, when to do the work, and what binds or liberates the higher self. Now we learn about an understanding, buddhi, which gives the ability to discriminate between details to understand the right path to take and the strength needed to avoid wrong paths. This understanding from the sattvic perspective knows what is to be feared and what is not to be feared, and is able to observe and analyze oneself with the required detachment to critically evaluate one's own personal behaviors and attitudes in daily life. Such a mind understands how the higher nature can become entangled in the lower nature and understands how to liberate the soul from more bondage of reliving or recreating the tendencies or vasanas at play within oneself. The Rajasic understanding wrongly understands what ought to be done and what should not be done from its own preconceived notions and judgments and powerful likes and dislikes. The Tamasic understanding is a chronic bundle of misunderstandings, as the mind and reasoning is covered by the darkness from an ego-bound perspective. This mind literally sees the right as wrong in its understanding. Now, fortitude, dhriti, is given some clarification by Krishna. This gives a person a steadiness of purpose to pursue the right path in spite of obstacles, and allows one to face them all courageously, heroically, and steadily. This constancy of purpose allows an individual to pursue action in his or her field of endeavor through his or her own understanding or buddhi. Krishna insists here that for this steadiness, yoga is absolutely necessary. With faithful contemplation upon the self, the mind gains steadiness, peace, and satisfaction, and this is how the mind develops the capacity to rule over the sense organs. This itself cannot happen unless there is a steady flow of fortitude gained through constancy in endeavor and consistency of purpose. This is the experience of sattvic dhriti, or fortitude. Fortitude from the Rajasic perspective is one that holds to duty, pleasure, and wealth, and maintains attachment and craving for the fruits of action. Such a person follows dharma to reach the heavens, in this life or after death. Wealth, artha, is pursued to have power in this life, and desires, kama, is pursued with a firm belief and faith that this will give all satisfactions in life. The steadiness from the Rajas perspective is with this intention. The Tamasic perspective is given special emphasis here, as this is the one that the majority of us experience. This is one that has a steadiness of purpose in which one does not give up one's dreams and imaginations, fears and agitations, griefs and sorrows, depressions and arrogance. This personality quality projects upon the world of objects a dreamlike value of reality and a false joy, and then through hard work strives to gain these joys. Here it is clarified that grief is the painful feeling that something that has already happened in the past. Depression is a result of our despair regarding the future, and arrogance is the sense of lusty conceit with which a foolish person lives one's current life in the present. Action is an expression of desire from accumulated vasanas. Actionlessness is the absence of desire. Neshkarmya is actionless abidance in the higher self from realization of the knowledge of the higher self and awareness of one's renunciation of the false lower self. The one who has got the purity of mind that is entering the path of knowledge is then explained by Krishna, and he shares how to get to the peak of the realization. He suggests the learning and understanding with meditation, which includes withdrawing the mind from attention towards the world of objects and also absorbing in union with the higher self. Krishna reminds that time alone here is important. Eating light foods and not too much, and maintaining mastery over body, mind, and speech. A person who has got vairagya, which is detachment and renunciation, will not be distracted, especially with earlier preparation from a person who is intent on the practice of meditation. Control the mind with buddhi, which is understanding, and dhriti, which is determination, as is present from a sattvic space. This is with right understanding, patience, and renouncing the world of objects in the time of meditations. Remember that objects are outside, but the mind has its likes or dislikes, memories, feelings or emotions or thoughts inside. Thus, perception must be controlled from all aspects here. In meditation, one must sit in the attitude of a sannyasi. The choice to pay attention to any thought is one's own conscious choice. The secret is to not pay attention to the thoughts and do pay attention to one's own intention. For meditative union with the divine, Krishna reminds that one must drop pride, ego, and arrogance about one's power, wealth, wisdom, spirituality, or ownership. One must drop desires and anger, knowing that even the desire for calmness or realization or liberation can become a subtle desire. Remember that we have all accumulated and hold on to many things, physical items and emotional, mental, and psychological attachments. All of these need to be dropped, from the gross to each of the subtle levels. This is the person who is fit for realization of his or her higher consciousness or Brahman. This person becomes the ultimate pure energy, which is a cheerful mind with no particular likes or dislikes, no dependence on or attachment to the external world, and one with no cause for grief. He or she sees themselves as the self, the higher self, in all beings and in each experience. There are no fluctuations in such a mind who also gains devotion for the Supreme Consciousness. Krishna warns Arjuna that if he does not heed these words, he will not achieve any long-lasting success, but rather only great loss. If he practices with this truth in mind, he will achieve ultimate peace and liberation is possible. Arjuna does ask, since he will die anyways, what would happen if he does not practice with this knowledge in mind? Krishna explains that because of his own false ego and arrogance and misconceptions filled with illusions, he shows he still does not understand. He explains that his own spirit will force him as matter to act as his will directs, as he is born and bound to the gunas and karma of his own nature. If today he escapes from this duty, another day he will face the same. So rather than postponing this action, he encourages Arjuna to act now as the time is right to do so. One simple example is to think of when the body has a strong need or desire to yawn, but holds it back. The yawn will happen as soon as it can once again. This can be said for any action that is tied to our own gunas and vasanas. When it's in our nature, it will reflect in our actions. He reminds Arjuna that there is a higher consciousness above an individual soul. The individual soul is bound to its history of karma and vasanas. The higher consciousness, sometimes called the supersoul, provides the ability behind every soul. So seeking refuge in this space helps to release it from the individual karmas. The higher consciousness dwells in the hearts of all souls and is ready to release itself from the bondages of the human experience that binds all souls. In the hearts of devotees, this same energy is eager to help each person achieve their heart's honest, true, and pure desires. This grace is shared with one who thinks, speaks, and acts from the intention of union with higher consciousness, which is in essence the same as one's own higher self. Krishna explains to Arjuna that he has revealed and shared the highest truths to him. Until this knowledge becomes Arjuna's, he will not experience the significance of the words, though he may understand them. Chapter 18. The Yoga of Liberation Through Renunciation. For the Healthcare Guru. This chapter has many sections that may be more completely understood by reading the full text version of the Gita, but for the summary purposes of this book, the key details were explained in the previous section. Now to truly apply this to the life of one working with healthcare. This may be a mother or father raising a child, a caregiver of an elderly relative, a friend caring for another in a hospital, and most regularly, a healthcare provider or professional who has chosen this work as his or her career. If we look at the example of Arjuna, we think of his nature: simple, straightforward, pure of heart, and eager to acquire wisdom. Doesn't this sound like each of us as students that we're eager to get into our intended field of practice as healthcare practitioners? Some may be in this space today. Some have been practicing for many years and may be noticing that the eagerness has faded because of personal or professional responsibilities or experiences. For many, the spark of eagerness could use some relighting. In this chapter, we learn how the process of uniting with our own higher consciousness can be the bridge for this lightning, literally, experience. This is the time for us to remember that we came to our chosen Dharma because it felt right somehow. This is likely part of a deep calling that came from our hearts. Most of us have seen success and seen losses too. And many of us do not take the time to truly understand why we do what we do in the way we do it. We learned in this chapter that a sannyasa renunciates desire-prompted action. Tyaga was described as renunciating the fruits of action. Are healthcare practitioners willing or able to do this? I believe the best healers of mind and body that I know of have done this. Yes, I would look at Buddha, Krishna, and Jesus as such teachers and healers. I believe they were the same in their personal as well as their professional lives of service to others, selfless. And maybe we are not in such a space and may not wish to be, and that's okay. Yet we can look at simple ways to push ourselves to be better, like when someone else is getting credit for something we've done. This could be as simple as wiping a table clean with disinfectant. Can we let that go to just be? See, unless we become mindful about the little things that our minds want to take credit for, even rightfully, we forget how small these things are and we become even more demanding for whatever we desire, which may be honor or recognition, wealth or prestige. We can become mindful to remember what the work is that we are doing. The work is to help others. If we help someone who is not the patient or client, aren't we still doing our dharma? This is important to think about or contemplate. In healthcare, we have become very attached to healing a disease of the body or mind and less aware of our own efforts through our thoughts, words, and actions on the entire healthcare team. From research to treatment, each person is enjoying more and more the I did that or I discovered that perspective that comes from egoic attachments to work that ought to be done. Uniting with our higher consciousness or self regularly can keep some humility in our minds that can then interact with all others from the same space. We are reminded in this chapter about knowledge. Karma and actions are all influenced by the three gunas in us. Through this book, we can learn to mindfully stop to consider which of the gunas is influencing any thought, word, or action coming through us. Then we can consider if it is the most useful one to work from in that moment. In this way, we are training ourselves to be responsive rather than reactive in every situation. This may seem like a lot of work, but like any skill, it becomes easy and natural the more we practice. We can consider how we practice our work itself. Is it with the tamasic perspective that feels our work is the most important? And it may be just that in a particular moment. Think of the nurse who is changing an adult diaper on an elderly patient. Is it done quickly right before the client's family arrives or the reporting doctor is visiting the patient? If such an important job is left for the praise or approval from such careful timing, it is not authentic care, nor is it doing what needs to be done just because it does, i.e., it ought to be done. From a Rajasic perspective, we may notice the value of the many different jobs that are being done in healthcare, but may still give more value to the doctor who gives the final word on the treatment plan for the patient. When we feel that everyone is contributing to the care of the patient, we can value the kitchen staff as much as the custodial workers or doctors in a hospital. This is a space of understanding and appreciating unity consciousness. All are working from a single consciousness that flows through each of us, and each person being important. From this chapter, we can reflect to understand our own intentions in our practice. Are we procrastinating, quarreling at work or home, lazy, greedy, unaware of the sorrow or distress we may bring to others? Are we aware of these qualities in our own personalities? Are we willing to improve to be better healthcare providers? I believe that many people are willing to do so. Many have never considered taking time to work through a process of self-inquiry to see if we are living a life that truly satisfies ourselves and those in our care too. We can each take time to understand if our higher nature has become entangled in our lower nature. This is not the time to justify the actions through reasons like higher bills, growing families, or personal health concerns. We can always think kinder thoughts, be kinder providers of care, and take even a little time to meditate regularly to remind us of this higher self sitting in each of our hearts, willing and ready to help when we take the time to ask. Do we make some alone time for ourselves? Many take this as a trip to a favorite store, a treat for the senses somehow, or a way for the mind to be busy with some desire or enjoyment, even reading. Perhaps we can mindfully choose to bring peace to our minds as we consider uniting with the higher consciousness that is flowing through us. Remember that as we do this more regularly, we are filled with a divine light and beauty from a heart filled with love and compassion. This is the type of healthcare practitioner that I would love to interact with. I suspect all of us would love to be this for our patients or clients or loved ones too. For most of us, this is the intention that brought us into this work. Let's remember to consistently work from that intention in our practice. Meditation is strongly recommended in this ancient text. Meditation is a time that we consciously drop our pride, ego, and arrogance about our power, wealth, wisdom, spirituality, and ownership of anything that we are experiencing. This is the divine journey. We can honor the journey for ourselves as much as for any client or patient. Conclusion. Now is always the right time to do things just a little better. I encourage all current and soon-to-be healthcare professionals to consciously, mindfully, and honestly work in a way that helps all. Let's come back to looking again at the idea of a healthcare guru. What does this mean? A guru is a Sanskrit term for a mentor, guide, expert, or master. Here we can remember that this includes every parent, every teacher, every person we learn from, who, as we know, can even be a child or a pet that someone can learn from. When we look at healthcare specifically, you may wonder, what exactly could an adult learn from a child or a pet? Could we learn innocence? Playfulness? Perhaps it's the satisfaction of just being. What beautiful gifts to help our mental, emotional, physical, and spiritual health. This also reminds us that the same consciousness that flows through every sentient being is the same, flowing through different equipment. Looking specifically at healthcare professionals, I hope that this book has reminded every reader that our thoughts, words, and actions affect our own health and each person we interact with. When we choose to live in this world in a respectful, compassionate, considerate, honorable, and meaningful way, we can be certain that we are helping people, and that is our own chosen dharma. If we are feeling overwhelmed by the work or not motivated to work with enthusiasm in our care, no matter what our role, we need to take some time to recenter and refocus on the details contained in this book. Let the energy of our own higher consciousness flow through to first fuel our own depleted resources. Then step forward honestly and humbly to provide the care from this space that has been missing in our healthcare system for some time. Do not let the mind's attachments or ego-centered drives lead the show. We are each guiding our own chariots into our daily battlefield between our lower and our higher natures. Let's let love flow through consciously to value our own roles and the roles of each person we meet so that the subtle energies of healing that are working to help others through each of us can flow freely. Let's be as respectful to every other person and energy, manifest or unmanifest, in the team that is helping each person. And let us remember that this is the eternal energy that is, has always been, and always will be behind every person's heartfelt intentions and actions. Nature itself is a wonderful healthcare guru. We can remember to learn from it regularly, always changing, always beautiful, always adapting. We are the same through our own human forms. Underneath all of this is the steady energy that can be remembered as Sat Chit Ananda, or existence, consciousness, and bliss. Whether you are new to the work of healthcare or a seasoned professional who has been practicing for many years, remember the steadiness and peace that is contained in these words. And always remember Tattvam Asi. You that are. You are that. Let us bring this divine essence back into our work individually and collectively and realize the power that is within such wisdom which is fueled by love. Namaste, readers. May the world be filled with healthcare gurus that truly remember and practice from this ancient wisdom.